we don't take lightly that buying a home or buying an investment is going to be amongst some of the most expensive items you'll ever purchase in your life. And there's a risk there. And if you don't get it right, it could cost you a lot of money and it could cost you a lot of time. And one of the big things we're focusing on at Aureus at the moment is generational wealth. And if we stunt that generational wealth, that can have a massive effect on our whole family. And we don't take that lightly.
Hello, and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems, and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to Uncovered. I've got an exciting podcast I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. I've got another amazing human from Aureus. His name's Ben, he's a mortgage broker. He actually just told me he can talk with a mouthful of marbles underwater, probably under the deep blue sea. So I'd love to give you a big warm welcome to Uncovered. Thanks for jumping on, Ben.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Look, what we do in Uncovered right at the beginning is we want to know, I don't want to know your mortgage broking stuff. I want to know about Ben. I want to know what it is about you that makes you really tick, what got you into the mortgage broking industry, and what makes you you, Ben.
I'll start at the start. So I grew up locally here. I like working locally. It was always my goal to.
Where's locally, mate?
It's in the northern beaches of Sydney.
Got it.
Aureus HQ.
Yeah.
I grew up in Avalon. I was really fortunate to grow up there. It's quite an affluent area now, but back then it was like a really nice beachside suburb and kids riding around their bikes till dinner time and that kind of thing. And that's all my parents could afford at the time. And moving basically north of Sydney in the 70s. And it was a great childhood. It was absolutely fantastic. And then I just did my schooling locally as well. And the funny thing was I thought I knew what I wanted to do when I left school. And I've got boys who are this age now. And I clearly have to remind myself that I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was leaving school. Nothing jumped out at me that I think I thought I'd be really good at. And so I just kept surfing after we got our HSC results. And my mum's a single and she was working, and she ducked back home for lunch. And then I got home, and on the table, in the kitchen table, was our local newspaper called the Manly Daily. And on it was opened up to the job section, and it said, "Dear Ben, love you, get a job or leave home."
That was it.
That was it.
Yeah, right.
So I applied for 3 jobs and got the 3 jobs. I got all 3. Then I had to decide which one, and I ended up working at the Manly Ringer Leagues Club and I was assistant to the bar manager. So I was basically stock control, counting bottles and ordering stock and all this kind of stuff, which was really good for me. I fell into a place where I was surrounded by adults. There was no one else 18 my age. So it helped me grow up a bit more quickly, and I think I needed that at the time. it was a really good time in my life. I really enjoyed it. So I kept going with hospitality, and at one stage, they put me through TAFE for a club management course, which was a new course, and I ended up being the youngest club manager in Australia at one stage, the age of 22. So I progressed quite quickly and enjoyed it, and then I thought I need a break, and just from the club side, so I went and worked for a consortium for a couple of years managing pubs and around Sydney, and they used to alternate the assistant managers to all the different pubs. So I did that for a little while. That career was cut short by some nice gentlemen who decided that they would want to rob from us late at night when I was closing up. And so that was the first time I saw a gun, when it was pointed at my head.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, and so they ended up not getting anything because we had a drop safe, and so they pistol whipped me and grabbed some cigarettes, proceeded to flee the place, and then a few days later they got one of them and he dobbed the rest of them in. So I thought to myself, there is alcoholism in my family. And not from a family of gamblers, but I thought, you know what, this is probably not the ideal environment for me. So I started looking for something else, and a good friend of mine said, well, you loved economics and you're pretty good at that. Why don't you go into banking? And so it took me a little while to get into banking, and I ended up going with a Commonwealth Bank and stayed there for a couple of years. And that's where I met my wife. Which is a good story in itself, because when I first met her, I started off as a teller down the bottom. So I went to, you get thrown into a branch for training, then you get thrown into the major branch nearby, and then you have to kind of get yourself promoted to get to other locations. So I thought there's a good opportunity to move back to where I was first started. And I went and saw the human resources person in the bank. It was a big, large branch at Monavale. And they said, oh, you have to go and see Heather Poulter. So I went and saw her, and I said, I'd like to apply for that GC2 position. She said, well, you can't. That's a sideways move. We only promote upwards. And I said, well, the position's available and I want to go there and nobody else is applying for it. Why can't you just give it to me? And she said, well, that's not how it works. And I said, well, that's stupid. And she said, you can go back to your box now. And I went down to my box, my teller box. They said, how'd it go? I said, she's an effing cow. Mm. And so, yeah, then about a year later, Heather and I got together, and she's been my wife for the last 22 years.
That's awesome. So she gave you a stick and it was all love.
Yeah, and she still tells me what to do. I still pretend that I wear the pants.
I don't wear the pants. I don't. Yeah. I just know that that's not the case. I just accepted that.
Well, no, I wear them when she's not around. So
yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Very so tough. And look, I had a short career in the bank, and then I moved into mortgage broking in 1998, and it was, we really didn't know what we were doing. We were very new to the industry, and I was working as a lender at the Avalon branch of the Commonwealth Bank, and I got a bit frustrated. A little villagey atmosphere, and people would shop us, and they'd go from us to ANZ to NAB to Westpac, and it just got frustrating. And one of the mobile lenders said, I'm going to get into this mortgage broking thing. And I said, yeah, I'm so frustrated, that people just shop us and they're looking on rate. They don't value what we do. And he said, well, we get to deal with 15 banks. And I said, how do we get paid? He said, I have no idea, but I'm sure we do. And I said, I'm in.
Right. So that was it.
That was it.
So tell me,
it wasn't that complicated.
What is a mortgage broker like? For the people who have no idea and maybe don't have a house and they've never done anything as far as acquiring a home, What does a mortgage broker actually do, and why are they important?
Yeah, so typically a lot of people would go back to the bank where they do their banking, their day-to-day banking. Today, in June 2022, about 69% of people use a broker. And
Yeah, wow.
A lot of people think it's a finance job. I actually think it's a people job, because you're building relationships with people. And I've got clients that one of my clients has just sold all his properties and retired. And he was my third client ever back in 1998. So you end up having very long relationships with people. And what a mortgage broker essentially does is helps you achieve your goals by finding out what is the most appropriate lender for you at that point in time. And there's lots of criteria around that: who you qualify with, what policy the banks have, and where you fit. We don't all qualify with every single bank. And the danger is that if somebody was to go down to a large suburb where they have a lot of representation of banks, and they went from one bank to the other, to the other, to the other, what they find is that they quickly, because they don't know the policy, and they might get declined quickly. And so I've said to people that when you come to a mortgage broker, it's like a dress rehearsal. So you get to put everything out on the table. You get to tell them what you're trying to achieve, and the mortgage broker will coach you and help you to realize what's possible, and then they'll facilitate it for you from start to finish. If you go straight in the bank and you start talking to the bank manager, whatever comes out of your mouth, you can't take back.
Right.
And they can't ignore it. And ultimately, you've got one bank with 4 products, where when you're dealing with a mortgage broker, I'm accredited with 25 banks. I could be accredited with about 50 lenders, but we've just never felt that we needed all of those lenders. The lenders that we're accredited with cover off on 100% of what our clients need.
Right.
So it's solutions based. It's, you've got a lot of really good brokers in the mortgage industry now, where all that experience used to be in the banks, and they've all left now. It's not so much just about product selection. It's really about strategizing and building a plan for people long term. And when you're working with someone and you intend to work with clients long term, you have a focus on the short, the medium, and the long term goals, and how to help them achieve that.
Yeah, I love that, because look, I've had a few brokers in my time. I didn't know I had to have a broker. Someone just said, go and talk to this guy. I didn't even know it was a mortgage broker. Yeah. So the place that you're seeing right now on video, I own. It was one of the first places that I got. It was a business, a business property as opposed to a home. And the only people that actually would support my loan at the time was ANZ.
Right, there you go.
So because of the rules. And so it's really, really interesting to know that, that was the only one that would actually support where I was at the time and what they were willing to offer me to have this place, and now it's owned, right? Because I didn't want to do something. I wanted to make sure that when I had my place where I was going to work, I was going to own it, because I watched my mum paying exorbitant amounts of rent in a business. I was like, I'd rather just own it, so then when the price goes up, it won't go up because it'll be me owning it.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's great. That's exactly the point. We don't always tick every box. And that's where, my services and my colleagues' services come in.
So can you tell us what a bad mortgage broker would be? Like, if you're looking for the listeners to get a little bit of an idea of what's a shonky one, right? What is it that you need to be looking for if you're looking for a person with the type of services that you provide?
I think the first red flag would be that they're not really listening to you. I find that the best mortgage brokers that I know will really, like, we have a discovery call with people and we really want to find out what they need. They might not know what they need, but they know what they're trying to achieve. And through that, I think listening is one of the biggest parts of our discovery with that client. And then we can help them determine what they can do. Whereas I think a bad mortgage broker would be someone who's just there for the transaction.
Yeah.
They already think they know what you need. They're really not listening to what you want moving forward. I think short term, because a lot of mortgage brokers now are very focused on medium to long term, and building relationships with people, because I think it's better for all concerned. I've had many clients over many decades who will just call me up and say, Ben, what do you think on this? Sometimes they won't hold me to it because it's just open advice. But I've been doing this for 24 years now. So there's lots of things that I've experienced through different global crises and through my own growth, from, like being like other people and, getting married in 2000, having children in the next decade, raising those children, buying homes, buying investments. And I think this is a good industry where when you've got someone who's really experienced, they can draw on that history to give you more relevant advice for you.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important. If you think about this, listeners, where if you have a young upstart, they're 23 years old, and let's say I come in and say, hey, I've got 3 kids, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z, can you help me? Their brains are not going to be thinking the same way, are they?
No, naturally they're not. They just don't have the life experience. And they might be thinking very transactional. And yes, they could probably go through the process of elimination and work out possibly which is the best loan, the best product, the best lender for you at that point in time, because there's some very talented young people around who can do their research. But it's like a financial advisor. You need someone when the world is going crazy. That's where you draw the best advice from. When the world is going well, anyone can give you good advice. And if you don't take it, it doesn't matter. But I think that, if you really want to build something, you need to, like any industry now, you need to have somebody that has the runs on the board and has proven that they can do that with other clients. That's where I've had lots of experience with, helping clients build different portfolios too. So for me, it's second nature to do that. And I think in advance of all the pitfalls and all the things, so we circumvent all those issues and make it just a smoother transaction for people.
Yeah, I think this is really, really important. There's one of my best friends has used your services, and I'm going to give you a little bit of feedback right now, just so you know what it's like to actually receive feedback from someone. She's got good wealth. She's got her own thing. And I said, why don't you go and get an investment property? And she's like, I don't know whether I can do that. And I had a chat to you, Ben, and basically what you did was you actually calmed her down. And I think this is what you can hear this in your tone too, Ben. And I've had experiences talking to you. You're helping me with my second investment property at the moment. And the voice of calmness, and it's like what it feels like for me is a grandfather talking to a grandson. It's like you have this tone that actually levels people out. And I don't know whether this is the feedback that I got. She completely calmed herself down, and she was just like, oh, thank you for sending me Ben, because it's not just hey, I can provide you this service, because you're actually providing who are you, what you're about. And people get nervous about these things, especially right now, because it's not just silly times, it's crazy times at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. There's a lot of people that are very worried. And thank you for that feedback. As I say, it's a people business. It's about people. And we don't take lightly that buying a home or buying an investment is going to be amongst some of the most expensive items you'll ever purchase in your life. And there's a risk there. And if you don't get it right, it could cost you a lot of money, and it could cost you a lot of time. And one of the big things we're focusing on at Aureus at the moment is generational wealth. And if we stunt that generational wealth, that can have a massive effect on our whole family. And we don't take that lightly.
Yeah. And I think that, listeners, this is super, super important, because generational wealth is not spoken about very often. And I sort of stumbled across you guys. I was like, well, I was seeing this beardy guy talking some smack on Facebook for 6 months, and I was like, God, this guy is making so much sense. And that's what this is all about, is that if you want to create something that's going to create generational wealth within the family, you have to actually spend time with people who actually know what they're doing. And I know from experience, being a helper of many people for 18, 20 years or so. Oh, hang on, 24 years. What I've experienced with people is that people buying properties and they're actually duds, and they're in a mess financially because they haven't got the right information. They haven't got a plan. They've just been told by some shonky dude, buy this property and it'll be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And and you're right. And I've seen it many, many, many times. That wacko guy you speak of is Jackson Milan.
Yeah.
And I was the same when I joined Aureus in November last year. I was headhunted to come here and head up the lending department. I said, that's one of the questions I get asked a lot. What's Jacko like? And I said, you know what? For all his perceived differences, what he vocalizes is more common sense than I hear come out of majority of people.
Yeah, he does.
It's very straightforward, considered advice. And that's why we're focusing on the generational wealth. That's come from Jackson. And I've very much focused on that too, but I don't have the brain power that he has to put these programs together, which are just unbelievable. But yeah, when I wrote my book, I took that to my high school, and I took it to my old economics teacher, who is still there. And he was one of my greatest inspirations. And he's the reason that I loved economics. Yeah. And he's in the mention in my book. And I took it to him and I said, here's the book. Could you put it in the school library, just to make me feel good? And he said, of course I would. And he said, I'll do better than that. Let's put it in the curriculum. And I said, okay. So what parts can we use? And he said, well, would you believe there is nothing in the curriculum about lending?
Yeah, wow.
And because it's a private boys' school, they're allowed to insert that into the curriculum. So they're going to use some parts of the book to build that in. So the economics teachers were really pleased with that. I was pleased with that because I get to, give back to my school. I'm teaching my 3 boys the same thing about money and lending and moving towards buying investments. My 20-year-old has money invested on a regular plan now, and we haven't mapped out when he's going to buy his first investment property. And the aim is for him to get that property by 21. And I just wish I had someone that helped me do that as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think listeners, if you're in that, if this is really making sense to you, I'd love to ask this question for you, because we're looking at a person who is actually setting up the kids for life, right? And it really comes down to, a dad like you. There's more to it than just telling them how to be and what to do. To create something where they can actually know how to manage their money is so essential at such a young age. Because imagine having your first investment property at 21 years old, knowing what I know now, that when they're 30, that price, let's say it's 500K, will be worth $1 million at least.
Absolutely.
In 10 years. So they'll be sitting on $1 million property in 10 years time, and they're starting out really well from an educated man. So I'd love to know from you, Ben, in generational wealth, where does the lender come in? Where does that start to go into the process for people to actually learn to come in and look at housing and that sort of thing as an important part of creating a wealth portfolio?
I think the lending is actually a byproduct of the whole plan.
Right.
What we are trying to do is work out exactly where people are at in their life and what they can achieve financially. One of the things we look at naturally is, if you're a business owner, how is your business running at the moment? Are you paying yourself first with profit first, or are you just taking the scraps? So if you're just taking the scraps, which a lot of self-employed people do,
yep.
We have programs to train you to put a 180 degrees on your thinking and to start paying yourself first, because essentially you're the most important person in that business. If you're not there, that business doesn't run technically. So we try and ascertain where they're at in their life, what the potential is, what income is available, what equity is available. And once we work out that plan, that's where the lender gets involved by us suggesting a strategy for them and what we can use that lender for. So that lender is only a short-term part of that puzzle.
Okay.
Most of my clients who have dealt with me for 20 years we've probably moved them 3, 4, 5 times in that time frame to get better financing, better interest rates, better structure throughout that time frame. So it is a moving target.
Right.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, like, I never had, like, when I had my mortgage brokers in the past, they do the thing, I'd never hear from them again.
Mm-hmm.
So where are you different? Like, what happens with you? So you said you've dealt with people, for 20 years and that sort of thing. Do they reach out to you, or do you reach out to them? How does it all work, mate?
Both. Look, we have an open door that there's no, you can contact me anytime you like. I receive calls all the time, just for different things, just to my opinion. They might say, what do you think? Like, one of the big topics at the moment is the interest rates. So the interest rates are on their way back up. And they might have watched the Channel 7 or Channel 9 news, which is trying to spell out that there's a massive disaster right now. And what we do is we say to them, well, the reality is that the interest rates that I was getting for clients in February 2020 are higher than they are right now. So we're not in a position where we're not even back to normal. Pre-COVID. So there's really no reason for alarm. And a lot of people have been assessed at least 3% higher than what they borrowed for. So we find that a lot of people that had fear or anxiety that they may be under stress soon, when we look at their budget, we realize that they've been spending all that surplus money in probably discretionary lifestyle things that they wouldn't have done otherwise. And we know that we start to shape our world around our home loan repayment, and everything else gets done outside of that because we make sure that's done each month. So yeah, it's really there. In regards to a review, we do structured reviews. So we're doing what we call a soft review after 1 year, and we just internally check everything, reprice it if need be, make some suggestions. And then after 2 years, we do a hard review at 21 months. So it's for the 2 year point, but we do that at 21 months. So we've got anticipation before any fixed rates come off or anything like that. And from that point, if we don't do anything in that 2 year mark, we do it at a 3 year mark. But look, I'm the kind of person that if I'm driving to or from somewhere and you pop into my mind, I'll just give you a call just to see how you are. How's life? You know, what's changed? Do you need anything? You know, how are the kids? All that kind of stuff. So, you know, and the beauty is, as I said, with generational, I've looked after a lot of people in the 2000s, the 20, you know, the 10s, and now they're sending their kids to me too. So, you know, we're helping that next generation build their wealth, and that is so satisfying. I keep saying to people, this is one of the best jobs in the world.
Yeah, because
I get to help people build their wealth, and they don't pay me a fee for it.
Yeah, and when we look at this, Ben, security, right? It sits in the home. It's one of the most important things that creates safety is actually a home, whether it's an investment property or whether it's your own home that you're wanting to buy. So you're actually helping people become secure psychologically within themselves. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And that security, again, leads to generational wealth. And one of the big things that I'm sure you'll find this in your profession is that the biggest thing we fight over is money. And if we can take that out of the equation on many levels, it makes life a lot easier. And I have found that I've mediated some divorces and settlements. And when I've kind of taken away the emotion of it and I've brought it all back down, they realize that they're fighting over dollars and cents, but it's not really the dollars they're fighting over. They're fighting over a lack of something, or a lack of security, or a fear of being homeless, or a fear of not having choices. That's a very real problem with money and society, but this is where we're trying to help. And if we help with that generational wealth, then we're trying to alleviate a lot of those issues that might come up in the future.
I love this. So listeners, what Ben's just said that I just want to highlight right here is money equals choices. And so when people actually are more frightened of it, and I have been, that's how I found Aureus, because I had too much go into my bank account in a really short period of time and I didn't know what to do with it, because I'm not a person who chest beats about a whole lot of the coaches are going, yeah, I had a 95K month, look at me. And I was just like, oh shit, what am I going to do with this? I didn't know what to do. And I didn't want to be immature around it. So I found someone who was actually going to help create some security around my the way I think and the way I understand. And every time I talk to you guys at Aureus, Ben, I feel two things. One is I feel like a little kid who's learning from dad, right? And the other part is I feel like I'm in the right hands, right? And it's really nice to have both of those, because I feel like I'm growing up as I talk to all of you guys, and the time that I've been in Aureus to help improve the way that I think around money. And then I get these wise cats that are actually making me feel like I have someone that can teach me something that is not educated. I'm so happy. Can you tell us what your book's called? Like, what is your book? What's the name?
It's called Navigating the Finance Maze.
Yeah.
And I released it in 2020. It is a collection of case studies and PDFs that I used to send out to clients on various topics. So if you would ask me about family guarantees, for example, I'd send you out a 2-page document which basically explained that. And during COVID, we were, sending out a lot of those, and kind of dawned on me. A mate said to me, "You should write a book." And I said, "Oh, well, I probably should." We had all the material. And so we've put it into case studies, and it's really easy to read. It's not a book that's designed to be read from cover to cover. It is designed to go down the contents and pick up the section that is relevant for you, and to read that. And it's no more than a 5-minute read. And a lot of people are getting a lot of benefit out of it. So I give that to basically anyone that comes to us. You can have it's available on Amazon if you want to put it on your iPad or your Kindle. But we also have paper book versions as well that we give to all of our clients, and they've found it beneficial because they can just learn in detail a little bit more when they want to read at night or on the weekend or on holidays. And recently had a fella who said, "I haven't read a book since high school." And he said, "I've read half of your book and I want to read more." Because
cool.
Yeah, I think it's relevant. I think when we get to an age where if we're not readers of fiction, we would just want to read things that are relevant to us, and it appears to have that relevancy.
I love that. I'm going to have to make sure that we put your book in the show notes so people can get it, and I can get it too. So now I had no idea that you've been holding out on me, Ben. You haven't told me about this book. I'm a bit pissed off, to be honest. Right. So
I'm sorry, I'll make it up to you.
Yeah, that's it. So I'm gonna have to grab that book off you at some point. And I love the fact that what you spoke about here is so essential. We get to a certain age, right? And then we look at relevance. There's only a reason why we do this. Look at what you're doing for your son, right? He would never know any form of relevance if you didn't, or sons, he wouldn't know any of this being relevant if he didn't have a dad like you, right? And so you're creating relevance by education, by sharing stuff that you know. And a lot of kids are not going to get this form of education. It's so lucky that you've been able to infiltrate your private school, because a lot of the time how to build wealth is not actually in the education system. We learned trigonometry and all of this stupid shit, and with numbers that meant no fucking use to anybody in this world, except for I don't know what I learned in maths. Really, all we needed was a calculator now for all the stuff that 7 8s are 56. So what? So what that I can memorize 12 12's 144. So fucking what? I didn't know how to do any of the calculations around finances. My parents didn't know how to do this. I remember, and it's quite interesting learning from you guys. My parents negatively geared a house, and they were like, "You got to negatively gear," and I'm just like, hang on, no, you don't. You positively gear a house, and this is how you do it. But they were taught what they were taught by people who had no idea what they were doing was negative gearing is really important to drop your tax, but it's actually the complete opposite to actually building wealth and financial freedom. The biggest mistake is to negatively gear, is what I've learned now. But I was expecting I was going to be negatively gearing my first investment property, and it's positively geared. It's so weird what we learn from people who don't know what they're doing to a person like yourself. So relevance is really coming down to understanding, finding people like Ben at the time. Like, I'm 50. I wish I found you. I wish this was relevant when I was starting my business in starting the journey in 1998. I wish I had that relevance back then. But I stumbled on relevance, which is shit.
I think a lot of us did, to be honest. And the world has changed so much that I was the type of person that I thought, rather than hiring someone to do that, I'll learn that. And I'll try and do it myself. And as I've got older, I have found that I now too will just find the professional in that industry, and I'll get their assistance to do it. I think it's too hard to wear too many hats nowadays, and we really do have professionals in every industry that are available to us to help us.
Yeah, and I think this is really important. If we start looking, we'll find them. And then I've quite often found some. I've had a hard time finding the right ones. Over time, I've found people who put on a big show but don't have much behind the show. They're a little bit naked.
Yep.
And it can be very, very challenging when you're looking for the right people and you actually realize that they're nude behind what they're sharing, which means they actually don't have the experience. They don't have the know-how. They're just putting on a show. And this is what social media is awesome on one level. It's also really shit on another, because there are people that I find out and they say, oh, I do this thing. And I'm like, and then I find out what's really going on, and they actually don't do that thing at all. They're just marketing that they do the thing, and then you pay for it and you realize that their service is shit.
Yeah, I remember in my late 30s, and it dawned on me like a sledgehammer that most people are winging it.
Yeah.
And that they will come across that they're the authority and they're just winging it like a lot of people, and they don't. And that's what I like about the guys at Aureus. That's what attracted me here. They don't wing it. It's very structured. It may seem as though it's not structured, but it's very structured. It's very considered, and there's a lot of information and tools and research that goes into all of their courses. And this is what, this is why we want to do this, because like we said with schools, it's almost criminal that our kids aren't being taught how to borrow money, how to pay it back, and what is compound interest. It's going to affect them for the rest of their lives, if not have the most major effect on growing up, raising a family, not raising a family, moving around the world, their retirement, safety, medical. There's so many things that we know these kids should be taught now that are still not being taught in our tertiary institutions.
Yeah.
It's a travesty.
Well, it is. And look, I think this is really essential, listeners, is that I'm hoping that this has put a little bit of a fire under your belly to be thinking, maybe if you can't think about this for yourself, if you've got kids, think about it for them. We've all got to learn this, that there's a thing that you said that's really even more important. Learn it a little bit. But
Absolutely.
Don't learn everything if you don't like it. Find people like Ben that can do the heavy lifting for you. Find good people that can really take the weight off your shoulders, because doing it yourself sucks. So I remember I was chatting to one of the guys who does the investors agency who found the house for me, got you guys involved to do the broking. And the guy said to me, hey, he's like, hey, Jason, what do you want? And I said, well, Bobby, I sort of want you to decide that, because I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. So I'm just going to do as I'm told, right? And your job is to find the house, and my job is to get what I do. And then I get the broker, and then I just pay, right? That's just my job. And then I learn from you how it's all going to look. And he looked at me and he said, oh, you're going to be one of our best clients. I said, I don't know what I'm doing. You guys know what you're doing. And I trust who this has come through, which is Aureus. So I knew I was going to get a really good deal. And I'm just going to keep doing this by getting the right advice, learning enough, right? I want to learn enough, but numbers are not my favorite thing. People are. So I want to actually just learn enough to know that I'm not stupid in all of this process, but you don't have to know every single thing. That's what your job is. Is that correct, Ben?
Absolutely. We look, I quite often tell new clients that the one selfish part of my role is that I'm going to educate you throughout this process so that you know more than when you started. And this all makes sense. And I say to people, one thing that I learned very early on is that if somebody looks at me like a deer in the headlights, they're not understanding what I'm telling them. But as soon as they start doing this, that's a natural human response. It means I understand. And it's in my best interest too, to educate someone to get them to the higher levels, because the more educated they are, the more robust and higher level conversations I can have about their wealth and moving them to the next level, and then the next level, and then the next level, so that they start interacting in their own process and say, you know what, I'm not going to spend that extra money. I'm going to save that money because Ben's taught me, or Sam's taught me, or Jackson's taught me that if I have a little bit of delayed gratification here, I've got more towards the next deposit on the property, or pay my home loan down so I've got more equity. That will help my life. That will allow me to borrow more. That will allow me to build my wealth. And so that education piece for us educating people is vitally important, vitally important. And that's part of the book. You know, I've been trying to educate people for years and years and years, and the book is just putting it all into one package that's freely available for a lot of those subjects and the content within that subjects that generally can only be learned by going through the process of the person who provides that service.
So Ben, I've got a question for you. If let's say there's a friend of mine, Jake, who wants to buy a home, and they want to do that, can I send them to Aureus to for you guys to be the broker, or does that not work?
Yeah.
Like, how does it work?
No, absolutely. Yeah, look, we're the first port of call. You know, a buyer's agent, a conveyancer, a solicitor, they're all the second part. You really have to put the horse before the cart.
Yeah.
We need to know what you can borrow first. We need to know what your financial position is. And so when we have new clients come on board, we have a discovery meeting with them. We see what their goals are. We discuss what we think is possible. And then we go through the process to get that pre-approval, to just make sure that all the boxes are ticked. Because if we send you out to look for properties before you're ready, there's a possible outcome there that you're not ready, and that's going to give you distress when we turn around and say, sorry, but you're not really there yet. You're not ready. So we try and get you ready first.
Yeah.
And then we will refer you on to the appropriate other, what I call the inner sanctum. That's another part of my book about your inner sanctum, who you should have on your team of professionals that can help you get to where you need to get to.
Okay, Ben, now you've just got, now for me, I'm sitting here feeling like I've got a bit of FOMO because I don't have your book, right? So I'm going to have to make sure that I wring that book out of your neck after we finish this podcast today, and make sure I get a copy. Listeners, I think this is a really good puzzle piece for everyone to learn about. That Ben, for the housing part, is your first port of call, the place where you need to go. But it doesn't stop with Ben; it starts with Ben. You know, because what Ben's wanting to introduce here is getting people to understand that the journey of wealth doesn't just start with that first conversation, with that first house. It starts with a never-ending journey to actually get the support from people like Ben to get your mind thinking and ticking in a very different way. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You need a team around you, but there's always a starting point, and the discovery call is just that. And I have clients who say, I'm glad you took the time to listen to what I have to say, because a lot of people, you were going back to what is a bad broker. A bad broker is somebody says, how much money do you want? And let's find you the cheapest interest rate. It's nothing to do with that. That is the furthest thing from what somebody actually needs to achieve. That's a byproduct of the whole conversation. The conversation is, where do I want to be? Like, what do I need for my retirement, or what kind of, if I've got three kids, I need a house that will, house all of us. Not, oh yeah, 2-bedroom unit will do, you can afford that. Well, that's not going to work. So it's about, starting at the start and going through the process, getting all of our ducks in a row, and then going forth and using the specialists like Bobby, who can find that investment property for you if that's what you need. Or we have other buyers agents on our panels who can find the owner occupied property for you. There's lots of people who are expats who are overseas at the moment, and they're not sure how their foreign income will work in Australia. Again, another reason why somebody would need to contact a mortgage broker first.
Oh, that's fantastic. So listeners, if you like this podcast and you really like what you're hearing from Ben, I'd love it if you could like and review our podcast. Let people know about this process, because Ben's creating something for your families. Ben's creating something for your futures. Ben's creating something for safety. Ben's creating something for security. He's not just a mortgage broker, he's an educator. And I think this is so super important in this day and age where everything's a little bit crazy at the moment. We need sanity, and Ben, you provide it. So Ben, I really want to thank you for jumping on Uncovered and giving us a little bit of an understanding about what a mortgage broker does and the way that you do it, that is a little bit different to the way everybody else does it in this world. So thank you so much for jumping on.
Yeah, thank you. I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been great.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate your time, because time is so valuable. What we'd love you guys to do, if you like this podcast, if you could share it with your friends, and also our website address for the podcast is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Our website is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We have a free Facebook group called Wellness Leadership Evolution, so search for that. I'd love it if you could add me as a friend on Facebook. I don't buy it, so add me as a friend. And if you want some help and you would really like some support from us in the Academy, jump in. We have a process. You can do a break-in call to connect in with us. We do small courses. We have lots of things that we share. So we'd love the opportunity to give you a chance to change your life and turn it into a free one. You are one transformation away from change. Come and catch up.